You ever see a grown man get locked in a barn with a furious ram and think, well, this is exactly why you don't mess with country folks? Because that's what happened here, and honestly, I'm still not sure whether to laugh or send a thank you card to my grandpa's stubborn streak. See where I'm from. Property lines are marked by mud, and memories not by clipboards and polo shirts. And my grandpa Ray, he's the kind of guy who'd rather fight a tornado than a bureaucracy. But fate decided to throw both at us in the same week. It all started when Grandpa stomped into the kitchen, grease on his hands, and that look on his face like someone just told him the barn roof was leaking again. He slapped a crumpled envelope on the table, and before I could even say good morning, he was muttering about another love letter from the Briarcrest HOA. I read it trying not to laugh because apparently our barn painted the same stubborn shade of red since before I was born, was suddenly out of compliance with community aesthetics. I'm telling you, these folks act like we live in Beverly Hills, not a town where the cows outnumber the people 2-to-1. Grandpa just snorted and said, "They think they can tell me what red is." Right then, I should have known this was about to turn into one of those stories that gets told at every family barbecue for the next 50 years. And wouldn't you know it? The HOA's new enforcement officer, a guy named Randy Spicer, showed up later that day, swaggering like he'd just been cast as an extra on Law and Order khaki sunglasses. Clipboard the works. He called out Ray Collins. Grandpa barely looked up from fixing the tractor, just grunted. "You here to sell me vitamins or write me a ticket?" Without missing a beat, Randy started rattling off codes violations. And get this claimed, he had credible reports of unauthorized livestock. Now Beelzebub, our ram, must have heard his name because he stuck his head out and gave a snort that would have sent most men running. Not Randy. He just scribbled on his pad, said, "This isn't over," and drove off like he'd won something. Grandpa grinned and said, "I warned him about that barn." Fast forward to that night, Grandpa and I are half watching a rerun of some old car auction, half glancing at the security feed when we spot a flashlight bobbing toward the barn. "He wouldn't," I whispered. But Grandpa just smirked. City boys never learn. What Randy didn't know was that Grandpa had rigged the barn door with a latch that locks from the outside if you step on the wrong board. Sure enough, we see Randy creeping in door swings shut behind him, and then absolute mayhem. The sounds coming out of that barn man. It was something between a demolition derby and an exorcism. Beelzebub was having the time of his life, and Randy, let's just say his confidence didn't last long. 15 minutes in, he's up in the hayloft waving his undershirt like a white flag, while Grandpa's sipping coffee on a stool outside, calm as you please. And here's where Grandpa's sense of humor shows up. He writes a note. "Admit you trespassed. Drop all citations and apologize to the ram." Slides it under the door and waits. Eventually, Randy limps out, straw in his hair, smelling like pure fear. And Grandpa can't help but throw out, "Next time bring a priest." By breakfast, the whole town's talking. Someone made a meme of Beelzebub in sunglasses captioned, "The real sheriff of Briarcrest." You can't buy that kind of publicity, you know, but you know how these things go. Randy's pride wasn't about to take a beating and just slink away. The next day, there's a formal letter on the porch claiming we'd shown aggression toward an officer and warning us about further consequences. Grandpa barely blinked, just tossed it in the compost. But that night, we spot someone else snooping around, snapping pictures smaller, quicker, dressed in black. Not Randy. And that's when Grandpa leaned over and whispered, "They're building a case." Next morning, the HOA sent a registered letter threatening a lien on the property if we didn't comply with every code in the book, plus a few I think they made up on the spot. Now here's where the twist comes in. Our neighbor across the way. Mrs. Green? She's usually quiet. Keeps to herself, bakes killer pecan pie. That afternoon she stops by, says she saw some strangers taking photos of our property, and hands Grandpa a thumb drive. "Figured you'd want to see what's on this," she says. On it, photos, emails, even a video of HOA President Hartfield telling his crew to make life uncomfortable for the Collins family until they sell. Turns out the whole paint drama was just step one in a scheme to pressure legacy owners out for a luxury development project. And just like that, the fight was bigger than us. It was about the whole town. Grandpa, being Grandpa, didn't take it lying down. He painted the barn in every legal shade of beige and oatmeal the HOA had ever approved, turned it into a Neapolitan mess that nobody could say wasn't compliant. Then we organized a community potluck and ram parade, which is just what it sounds like. And let me tell you, Beelzebub loved the attention. People started showing up with stories about petty fines, threats, all of it. The town rallied, and suddenly the HOA wasn't the one with all the power anymore. When the HOA called us in for a disciplinary hearing, Grandpa didn't go quietly. He brought every neighbor he could a stack of security photos showing Randy trespassing and that little thumb drive. Hartfield tried to keep control, but it all unraveled quick, especially when Mrs. Green stood up and read those emails out loud for everyone to hear. The look on Hartfield's face, yeah, that happened. In the end, the HOA suspended all enforcement actions, and Hartfield got booted as president. We thought we'd won, but then the county sent notice of a vote to rezone the whole area for commercial use. If it passed, they'd bulldoze not just our barn, but every bit of old Briarcrest left. We got to work flyers, calls even posted Grandpa's speech online. The whole town packed into the high school gym the night of the vote, and I'll never forget Grandpa's words. You can't build a future by bulldozing your past. Sometimes you need to let a ram guard it. It was close, but the town voted down the rezoning plan, and for one shining night, it felt like we'd actually won. We celebrated with music barbecue, and of course more muffins for Beelzebub neighbors. Laughing kids running wild. Even Randy Spicer showed up out of uniform, carrying a blueberry muffin and a sheepish grin. He apologized. Grandpa clapped him on the back, and we all laughed about how sometimes the best lawman is a ram in a bad mood. But you know, as we sat on the porch watching the lights fade out and the barn leaning just a bit, Ms. Green came over, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Don't think this is the last of it. These folks never really quit. They just regroup." I guess she's right. Because out here, standing your ground isn't a one-time deal. You have to keep showing up, keep fighting, keep telling your story. So let me ask you, was Grandpa right to fight fire with fire, or was there a better way? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Where's the line between protecting your home and causing a little chaos for justice? I want to hear your stories, your fights, your wins and losses. After all, sometimes it takes a stubborn old man and a legendary ram to remind the world what community is really worth.